She had been working at the restaurant for years, moving quietly among the tables, refilling drinks, taking orders, and always wearing a polite smile. The restaurant was a grand place, with shiny chandeliers, polished floors, and tables covered in white linen. People came here to feel special, to be served by attentive staff, and to enjoy the atmosphere of wealth and sophistication. She had learned to navigate this world of elegance, without ever becoming a part of it, always in the background, observing the lives of those who seemed so different from her own. The work was tiring. Long shifts left her feet sore and her back aching. The nights were the hardest, filled with endless clinking of cutlery, the murmur of conversations, and the occasional bursts of laughter from patrons who had just received some extravagant dish or drink. She often felt invisible, like a ghost moving silently between tables, ensuring everything ran smoothly while no one noticed her at all. Yet, even though her life seemed small in comparison to the glittering world around her, she carried a secret that kept her going. Every evening, after finishing her shift, she would linger in a quiet corner of the restaurant. There, tucked away from the sight of guests, stood an old piano. Its wood was worn, and the keys showed signs of years of use. Some guests had played it in the past, some had ignored it entirely, but for her, it was a sanctuary. She would press her fingers to the keys, letting the music flow, telling stories without words. Each note was a whisper of her dreams, a sigh of her longing, and a celebration of the small joys in her life. She did not play for anyone else. The restaurant staff knew she played, but it was more of a curiosity than anything else. Sometimes the night manager would pass by and nod in acknowledgement, but mostly, she played alone, losing herself in melodies that seemed to exist only for her. The music allowed her to leave the world of noise and demands behind and enter a place where she felt alive, where her heart could speak freely. Her days were often filled with exhaustion. She woke up before dawn, went through the morning rush, at home, prepared her simple meals, and then made her way to the restaurant. She had learned to balance her work with her love for music, stealing moments whenever she could. At times, the schedule was overwhelming, and she wondered if she would ever get a chance to truly share her gift with the world. But the piano was her companion, and even if no one else heard her play, it gave her hope. The patrons of the restaurant rarely knew her story. They saw her as just another member of the staff, someone who delivered food and cleared tables. But sometimes, she noticed subtle glances, fleeting moments when a guest would catch her tapping her fingers lightly to an imaginary rhythm while walking between tables, or when a smile would flicker across her face as she remembered a melody she had composed. Those moments were private victories, small sparks of joy in a life that often felt monotonous. She had learned to observe people quietly. The restaurant was a theater of human emotion, and she was both a participant and a witness. She saw couples arguing over trivial matters, friends celebrating promotions or birthdays, and lonely individuals sipping wine in silent contemplation. Each person carried a story, and sometimes, in the quiet moments between serving, she imagined what music they would listen to, or what song would accompany the chapters of their lives. Despite the differences in her life and theirs, she found connections in the simplest ways. A child who clutched a spoon too tightly and watched her with wide eyes reminded her of the innocence she cherished in her own youth. An older gentleman tapping his fingers on the table to an unheard rhythm reminded her of the music that connected generations. She realized that music and human emotion were universal, transcending wealth, status, and circumstance. It was this understanding that made her own performances on the piano so personal, yet so relatable. She also learned patience in ways few people could understand. Waiting for a chance to play in front of an audience seemed impossible when her world was restricted to serving tables and managing trays of food. Yet, she understood that every experience, every shift, every interaction with the guests added depth to her music. The fatigue, the subtle frustrations, the fleeting moments of joy, they all became part of her expression, shaping the melodies she created in the solitude of the corner piano. Her colleagues were used to seeing her as quiet, diligent, and reliable. Some tried to engage her in casual conversations, but she often kept her thoughts to herself. It was not that she disliked them, but her mind was elsewhere, constantly composing, imagining, and dreaming. She would sometimes hum a tune softly, while wiping a table or stacking chairs at the end of the night. The music became a private dialogue with herself, a way to process the world around her without needing to speak aloud. She often thought about what it would feel like to perform in front of others, to let people hear the music that lived within her. The idea scared her as much as it thrilled her. What if they didn't understand? What if they judged her? The restaurant was a place of appearances, where wealth and status often overshadowed talent and sincerity. But still, the thought persisted. The piano was not just an instrument. It was a bridge to a life she had always dreamed of, but never dared to pursue. Despite her quiet demeanor, she carried a spark of courage. Every time she pressed the keys, she reminded herself that her music mattered, even if only to her. The melodies were born from her experiences, the long shifts, the fleeting interactions with strangers, the quiet moments of reflection. Each note was infused with her heart, and even if no one else noticed, she felt complete when the music flowed. The city outside the restaurant buzzed with life, but she often felt detached from it. Existing in a separate rhythm, she watched people rushing past the windows, caught up in their own routines, and she wondered about the stories behind each face. Some nights, the music she played seemed to mimic the city itself, a mix of chaos and beauty, of tension and release. It was a reflection of the life she led hidden in plain sight, carrying dreams that were invisible to those around her. The piano became her confidant, a companion that required nothing from her but dedication and honesty. She practiced in the quiet hours, refining her skills, experimenting with new melodies, and revisiting old ones. There were nights when she played so passionately that she felt as though she could reach across the room and touch the hearts of the people dining nearby, even if they remained unaware. That possibility kept her going, a quiet hope that someday her music would reach beyond the walls of the restaurant. She sometimes imagined the life she could have if given a chance to perform. She dreamed of stages, of audiences who would listen intently, of moments where her music could evoke laughter, tears, or reflection. But these dreams were tucked away, fragile and private, because the reality of her life required pragmatism. She needed to earn her living, to pay her rent, and to survive in a world that often overlooked people like her. Yet, in the corner with her hands on the piano keys, she was free, untethered from the demands of the world. Her passion was not about recognition or fame, it was about expression. Every evening, as the restaurant emptied and the staff cleaned up after the last guests had gone, she would sit at the piano and let the music speak. It told stories of longing, hope, resilience, and quiet triumphs. It carried her emotions in ways words never could. She learned that even in a world where she seemed invisible, her music made her feel seen, even if only by herself. The nights were her teacher. Each evening brought new challenges, unexpected requests from patrons, the fatigue of standing for hours, the pressure to maintain composure and professionalism. And yet, it was within these challenges that she found inspiration. The tension, the exhaustion, and the small victories in her daily life all became part of the music she created. She realized that beauty could emerge from struggle, and that expression was most powerful when it was genuine. Though she moved silently through the grand dining room, her mind was alive with melodies, rhythms, and harmonies. She carried the music with her like a secret, a hidden treasure that no one could take away. And while her life might seem ordinary to outsiders, to her, it was rich with potential, filled with moments of creativity, reflection, and hope. The piano was her gateway to that world, and she cherished every second spent at its keys, knowing that one day, her music might break through the invisible walls she had built around herself. The night started like any other, with the restaurant filled with chatter, the clinking of glasses, and the aroma of carefully prepared dishes drifting through the air. She moved between tables, carrying trays, taking orders, and responding to polite or impatient requests with practiced ease. But tonight felt slightly different. There was an energy in the air, a sense that something unexpected might happen. She didn't know why she felt it, only that it made her heart beat a little faster. The restaurant had been booked for a special gala, a night where the wealthy and influential gathered to celebrate, network, and enjoy the finest food and entertainment. A small stage had been set up near the corner, where a pianist was expected to play soft background music for the evening. She had seen the pianist arrive earlier, a confident figure in formal attire, tuning the piano and chatting with the manager. She watched quietly from her station, imagining the music that would soon fill the room, but never expecting to be part of it. Midway through the dinner, a sudden problem arose. The pianist had fallen ill unexpectedly and could not continue. The manager panicked, pacing behind the scenes, whispering to the staff and trying to find a solution. The guests were beginning to notice the absence of music, and the tension in the room grew. She watched silently, her fingers itching to play even as she moved among the tables. The manager's eyes landed on her, almost as if by accident. He had seen her practicing on the piano before, heard her hum tunes while cleaning, and perhaps thought she could fill the sudden gap. Hesitation flickered across his face as he approached her. "Can you play?" he asked, his voice low, almost uncertain. Her heart skipped a beat. She had never performed in front of a crowd like this. The thought of dozens of wealthy, important people watching her every move was terrifying. But there was something else, to a small spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, her music could reach beyond the quiet corners of the restaurant. I can try," she said softly, unsure if her voice would carry over the noise of the room. The manager nodded, relief washing over him, and guided her toward the stage. She followed, her hands trembling slightly, her mind racing with thoughts of mistakes, judgment, and embarrassment. Yet beneath the fear, there was excitement, the thrill of finally being seen. The guests noticed her approach, some with curiosity, others with mild amusement. She could feel their eyes on her, and for a moment, she imagined every mistake she might make. The piano looked larger, more intimidating under the bright lights. She took a deep breath, sat down on the bench, and let her fingers rest on the keys. The first few moments were quiet, the soft pressure of her hands against the piano, the gentle hum of expectation from the audience. She closed her eyes, focusing on the music she knew so well, letting it flow naturally. The first notes were soft, almost hesitant, but they carried a beauty that immediately caught the attention of the guests. The murmurs and chatter gradually faded as the room became absorbed in the melody. She felt herself relax slightly, lost in the music, her fear replaced by a deep sense of purpose. Each note was deliberate, each chord filled with emotion, telling a story that words could not capture. As she continued, the room seemed to transform. The wealthy patrons, usually so focused on appearances and conversations, leaned in to listen, captivated by the raw, genuine sound of the piano. Some closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them, while others sat in stunned silence, unable to speak. She played with a freedom she had never experienced before, letting the emotions of her life, her struggles, her dreams, her quiet moments of joy pour into the performance. Time seemed to blur. She played longer than she had planned, lost in the flow of melody and harmony. Each variation of the tune told a new part of her story. The long hours of waiting tables, the small victories she celebrated in silence, the moments of doubt and hope that had shaped her. The audience, initially skeptical, was now fully engaged, sensing the authenticity and depth in every note. They did not see a waitress in the corner. They saw a musician who poured her heart into the piano. The manager watched from the side, a mixture of relief and astonishment on his face. He had taken a chance, hoping she could fill in, but he had not expected this level of talent. The guests were whispering to each other, sharing glances of admiration, and some were even discreetly reaching for their phones to capture the moment. Yet she remained unaware of the effect she was having, focused entirely on the music. The melody began to build, layers of emotion intertwining, carrying the audience through a journey of feeling. It was not flashy or dramatic in the way one might expect from a formal performance, but it was sincere, heartfelt, and powerful in its simplicity. She could feel the energy of the room shifting, a quiet awe settling over the crowd, replacing the earlier chatter and impatience. The music became a bridge, connecting her world with theirs, revealing the shared human experience beneath the layers of wealth and status. For a brief moment, she thought she might cry, overwhelmed by the intensity of the music and the audience's response. But she pressed on, letting the piano guide her. Every chord resonated with her own life, and she felt a connection not just to the audience, but to herself. The performance was no longer about impressing anyone. It was about honesty, about letting her heart speak in a way she had always longed to. As the final notes lingered in the air, a profound silence filled the room. The guests were still, some holding their breath, savoring the ending, not quite believing what they had just heard. She opened her eyes slowly, noticing the expressions around her. Faces softened, eyes wide with admiration, some damp with emotion. The silence was heavy with respect, awe, and surprise. Then, gradually, the room erupted into applause. It started as a few claps, tentative and unsure, then grew louder and stronger, until the entire restaurant was clapping, some rising to their feet. She felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mix of relief, joy, and disbelief. She had done it. She had shared her music, and it had touched people in a way she had never imagined. Several guests approached her after the performance, offering kind words, compliments, and genuine admiration. Some were surprised that a waitress could play with such skill and emotion. Others were curious about her story, asking how she had learned, where she had trained, and what inspired her. She answered quietly, humbled by their interest, yet feeling proud that her music had spoken for her. The manager, now beaming with pride, told her that she had saved the evening, that the guests had been completely captivated, and that he had never witnessed anything like it. For the first time, she felt recognized, not just as a staff member, but as a person with talent, passion, and the ability to make an impact. The validation was unexpected but deeply meaningful, and it filled her with a renewed sense of purpose. Later, as the restaurant quieted down and the last guests left, she sat at the piano alone once more. The echoes of the night lingered in the room, the memory of the audience's reaction a comforting presence. She realized that her music had the power to connect people, to tell stories, and to evoke emotions that transcended everyday life. The thought was exhilarating, a promise of possibilities she had only dreamed of before. That night marked a turning point. She understood that her talent, long kept in the shadows, could no longer remain hidden. The experience had shown her that courage, even in small steps, could lead to extraordinary moments. The piano had become more than a refuge. It was now a bridge to a world that had seemed distant and unattainable, a world where her music could be heard, appreciated, and remembered. The following days were different from anything she had experienced before. She moved through the restaurant as usual, carrying trays, taking orders, and exchanging polite words with guests. But there was a new sense of possibility in her heart. The performance had awakened something inside her, a quiet confidence that had long been dormant. She began to notice how people watched her differently, with a hint of curiosity and admiration. It was subtle, almost unspoken, but it made her feel seen in a way she had never been. She returned to the corner where the piano sat each evening, her fingers tracing the keys, feeling the familiar comfort of the instrument. But now, the notes seemed to carry a different weight. The music was no longer just a private escape. It was a voice she could share, a story she could tell. She experimented with new melodies, weaving together the experiences of the past with the hope of what lay ahead. Each chord resonated with her growing belief that her music could touch others in profound ways. The restaurant continued to host events, and word of her performance had begun to spread quietly among the staff and a few of the regular patrons. Some of the wealthier guests who had attended the gala returned, curious to see if she might play again. The anticipation created a nervous excitement within her. She had played in front of a crowd once, and the memory of their reaction still lingered like a warm glow. But the thought of doing it again was both thrilling and intimidating. One evening, the manager approached her with a tentative smile. He explained that a small gathering was scheduled in the private dining area, an exclusive event with influential guests, and that the pianist originally hired had canceled again. Without fully realizing it, she found herself nodding. The offer was both an opportunity and a challenge, and her heart raced as she imagined performing once more. As she prepared, she felt the familiar nerves in her stomach, a mixture of fear and excitement. She reminded herself that the music was her ally, that each note she played carried her story and her emotions. Sitting at the piano, she allowed herself a deep breath, letting go of doubt and embracing the moment. The first notes filled the room, gentle and deliberate, catching the attention of the guests who were beginning to gather. The audience watched quietly, some leaning in, others simply sitting back, their eyes reflecting curiosity and anticipation. She played with the same sincerity as before, each note flowing naturally, telling a story of resilience, hope, and quiet determination. The room seemed to hold its breath as the melodies wove a tapestry of emotion, connecting everyone present in a way words never could. As the music continued, she noticed subtle reactions from the guests. A hand resting on the table twitched in time with the rhythm. A faint smile appeared on a face, and a few closed their eyes, absorbed in the sound. These small gestures encouraged her, reinforcing the power of her expression. The performance was no longer just about technique. It was about conveying feeling, about sharing a piece of herself through the piano. Time became fluid as she lost herself in the music. Each variation of the melody explored different emotions: the quiet melancholy of longing, the soft warmth of hope, the delicate joy of fleeting happiness. The audience was captivated, drawn into a world they had not expected to enter. Guided by her hands and heart, she could feel the connection, the unspoken understanding that transcended social class and status. Occasionally, she would glance up, noticing the subtle changes in the room. The wealthy guests, often seen as detached or unapproachable, were visibly moved. Some exchanged whispered comments of admiration, others simply listened, their attention fully captured. It was a new experience for her to see the immediate impact of her music, and it gave her a deep sense of fulfillment. The manager observed from the side, a quiet pride on his face. He had taken a risk by allowing her to perform, but it was clear that the choice had been right. The guests were not just entertained, they were affected, drawn into a shared experience that was both unexpected and genuine. The atmosphere in the room shifted from polite formality to attentive engagement, all because of the music she played. As she neared the end of the piece, she allowed the final notes to linger, letting the silence that followed speak as loudly as the music itself. The guests remained still, savoring the conclusion, their expressions reflecting a mixture of awe and respect. The silence was a testament to the power of her performance, a quiet acknowledgement of the connection she had created. Then, as the last note faded, the room erupted in applause. It began softly, then grew louder and more enthusiastic, filling the private dining area with sound and energy. She felt a warmth spread through her, a mixture of relief, joy, and pride. The applause was not just for her skill, but for the authenticity and emotion she had shared. It was a validation of her dedication and the countless hours she had spent practicing in quiet corners. After the performance, several guests approached her, offering kind words, compliments, and genuine interest in her story. Some expressed surprise that someone who worked as a waitress could possess such talent and depth of expression. Others asked questions about her background, her inspirations, and her journey with music. She responded humbly, feeling a mixture of shyness and pride. The recognition was new and exhilarating, but she remained grounded, knowing that the music itself was what mattered most. The manager spoke to her privately, praising her performance and suggesting that she consider more opportunities to share her talent. He mentioned the possibility of playing at future events, and perhaps even recording her music or performing for larger audiences. The idea was both exciting and intimidating, but she could not deny that it stirred a new determination within her. That night, after the guests had left and the restaurant was quiet once more, she sat at the piano alone, reflecting on the experience. The room still echoed with the memory of the music and the reactions of the audience. She realized that her talent, long kept hidden, could now reach beyond the walls of the restaurant. The music had a power she had only glimpsed before, the ability to touch hearts and create shared moments of emotion. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the long hours of work, the quiet dedication to practice, the moments of doubt and perseverance. Every struggle, every small victory had contributed to the depth and authenticity of her performance. The realization filled her with gratitude and a renewed sense of purpose. She understood that her music could not only provide solace for herself, but also bring joy and connection to others. In the days that followed, she continued to work at the restaurant, but her perspective had shifted. The piano was no longer just a private refuge. It was a bridge to new possibilities. She practiced with renewed focus, exploring new compositions and refining her existing repertoire. The memory of the audience's reaction fueled her creativity, inspiring her to push the boundaries of her expression. She also began to notice small changes in the way people interacted with her. Colleagues treated her with a subtle respect, recognizing the talent she had demonstrated. Some patrons lingered a little longer, curious to see if she might play, while others spoke of the performance with admiration and awe. The experience had not only affected her, but had also begun to influence those around her, creating ripples that extended beyond the music itself. Her confidence grew gradually, nurtured by each new opportunity to perform, each positive response, and each moment of personal reflection. She understood that fear and excitement often walked hand in hand, and that courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. The piano had become both a challenge and a source of empowerment, a way to navigate the complexities of her life with grace and authenticity. As she prepared for future performances, she embraced the uncertainty with a quiet determination. She knew that not every note would be perfect, that mistakes might happen, and that the audience might sometimes be unresponsive. But she also knew that the music was not about perfection. It was about sincerity, expression, and connection. Each performance was an opportunity to share a piece of herself, to touch lives, and to grow as a musician and as a person. The transformation within her was subtle but profound. She moved through the restaurant with a sense of purpose, her interactions more intentional, her presence more assured. The piano, once a secret companion, had become a gateway to self-discovery and empowerment. She understood that her journey was only beginning, that there were countless melodies to explore, stories to tell, and hearts to reach. And as she sat at the piano, feeling the familiar keys beneath her fingers, she knew that her music would continue to guide her, leading her toward a future filled with possibility, connection, and the quiet joy of sharing her gift with the world. The next performance came unexpectedly. The restaurant was hosting another private event, and she had been asked to play once more. As she walked toward the piano, her heart raced with a familiar mixture of excitement and anxiety. She knew the audience would be expecting something remarkable after her last performance, and the weight of those expectations pressed lightly on her shoulders. Yet, she also felt a quiet determination, a resolve to let the music guide her. The guests began to gather, chatting softly, glasses clinking, laughter echoing through the room. She could feel the atmosphere of wealth and elegance around her, but she focused on the piano, drawing herself into the safe space where the music lived. Sitting down on the bench, she let her fingers hover over the keys, taking a deep breath before allowing the first notes to flow. The music started softly, almost like a whisper, delicate and gentle. The audience, curious at first, slowly turned their attention to her, their chatter fading into silence. She closed her eyes and let the melody carry her, feeling each note as if it were a story unfolding in real time. Her hands moved with confidence, the rhythm steady, the harmonies rich and full, reflecting both her emotions and the journey she had walked to reach this moment. As she continued to play, she sensed the audience's reaction. There were subtle signs: leaning forward, heads tilting, eyes closing to savor the sound. Some of the guests were visibly moved, their expressions softening, others simply listened in awe. She realized that this was more than a performance. It was a shared experience, a connection between her heart and theirs through the language of music. Each note carried her past struggles, her quiet victories, and her hope for the future, reaching the listeners in ways words never could. She allowed herself to play with freedom, exploring dynamics and variations that reflected her inner life. There were moments of quiet melancholy, gentle passages that hinted at loneliness and longing, followed by brighter, hopeful segments that celebrated resilience and the small joys she had discovered along the way. The audience was drawn into these shifts, feeling the journey as it unfolded, caught in the ebb and flow of emotion. Occasionally, she glanced up, seeing eyes fixed on her, some wide with surprise, others glistening with tears. The reaction humbled her, but it also inspired her to play more passionately, to express herself fully without holding back. She had always wondered if her music could truly touch others, and now, in this moment, she knew it could. The fear that had once gripped her heart was gone, replaced by a deep sense of purpose and clarity. The manager watched from a distance, pride evident in his expression. He had seen her grow from a quiet, diligent waitress into a performer capable of captivating even the most discerning audience. He understood that her gift was not just technical skill, but the sincerity and depth of feeling she brought to each note. The guests, too, were realizing the rarity of what they were witnessing. Many had attended countless performances by trained musicians, yet this was different. It was raw, genuine, and profoundly moving. The performance continued, with each piece building on the previous one, creating a tapestry of emotion that filled the room. She noticed the subtle gestures of the audience, hands tapping in rhythm, smiles breaking through, eyes fixed intently on her movements. It was a delicate dance of connection, each note a bridge linking her to those who listened. She felt the energy of the room, and in return, her music seemed to flow more freely, more passionately. As the finale approached, she slowed the tempo, allowing the final notes to linger and resonate. The room was silent, every guest holding their breath, savoring the lingering sound. The music spoke for itself, a quiet statement of emotion, vulnerability, and triumph. She felt a profound sense of accomplishment, knowing that she had conveyed not just skill, but a piece of her soul. When the last note faded, a stillness remained for a moment before the audience erupted into applause. The sound was thunderous, heartfelt, and prolonged, filling the room with energy and appreciation. She felt a warmth spreading through her chest, a combination of relief, joy, and pride. The applause was not just recognition of talent, but an acknowledgement of authenticity, sincerity, and courage. Several guests approached her afterward, their words sincere and admiring. They praised the emotional depth of her playing, expressing amazement that someone who worked as a waitress could convey such artistry and feeling. Some shared personal stories of how the music had moved them, touched memories, or stirred emotions they had long forgotten. The conversations were humbling, a reminder that her music had the power to impact lives beyond mere entertainment. The manager also spoke to her privately, encouraging her to consider more opportunities to perform. He suggested that she could play at larger events, even in venues outside the restaurant, where more people could hear her music and experience its emotional resonance. The idea was daunting, but she felt a spark of excitement, realizing that her journey as a musician might be just beginning. That night, as she walked home after her shift, the city lights reflected in her eyes. She felt a sense of transformation, a shift within herself that had been quietly growing over time. The experience had shown her that courage, honesty, and persistence could open doors she had never imagined. Her music was no longer confined to private corners. It had the potential to reach far beyond, to touch hearts and create shared experiences. In the days that followed, she practiced with renewed energy and focus. The memory of the audience's reaction fueled her creativity, inspiring new compositions and explorations of melody and emotion. She experimented with harmonies, dynamics, and rhythm, always mindful of the connection between her music and the listeners. Each session at the piano became a journey, a dialogue between her heart and the world, a space where she could grow and express herself fully. She also noticed subtle changes in her daily life. Colleagues treated her with quiet respect, recognizing her talent and the dedication it represented. Patrons occasionally lingered to hear her play, or shared kind words, a quiet acknowledgement of her presence and skill. The experience had not only impacted her music, but had also begun to influence the relationships and interactions in her life, creating ripples of recognition and admiration. Through it all, she remained grounded, understanding that the essence of music was not fame or applause, but the ability to communicate, to connect, and to express truth. Each performance was a reflection of her journey, a sharing of her story, and a testament to the power of perseverance, passion, and authenticity. She had discovered that her music could transcend social boundaries, evoke emotion, and create moments of unity and understanding. The piano, once a secret companion, had become a source of empowerment, inspiration, and self-discovery. She realized that the journey was ongoing, that there were countless melodies to explore, stories to tell, and hearts to touch. The experiences of performing, connecting with audiences, and expressing herself through music had opened a new chapter in her life, one filled with possibility, creativity, and fulfillment. She continued to embrace every opportunity, every challenge, and every note she played. The fear that once held her back was now replaced by a quiet confidence, a belief in the value of her expression, and a recognition of the impact her music could have on others. Each day brought new chances to grow, to refine her skills, and to share her gift, and she approached them with gratitude, humility, and determination. In the quiet moments after each performance, when the applause had faded and the guests had departed, she would sit at the piano alone, reflecting on the journey and the emotions she had conveyed. She understood that music was not just an art form, but a language of the soul, capable of bridging gaps, healing hearts, and creating lasting connections. Her life had been transformed, and she knew that the path ahead, while uncertain, was filled with opportunities to continue sharing her story and touching lives through the power of music. The final chapter of her journey unfolded in ways she had never anticipated. Invitations began to arrive from people who had attended her performances or heard about her talent. At first, she hesitated, unsure if she was ready to step beyond the familiar walls of the restaurant. But the excitement in her heart outweighed her doubts. She realized that her music was meant to be shared with the world, that it could inspire, soothe, and connect people in ways that words alone could not. Her first opportunity outside the restaurant came as a private event at a small hall. She arrived early, her hands slightly trembling as she approached the grand piano waiting for her. The room was filled with people she had never met, yet she felt a sense of calm as soon as her fingers touched the keys. The music began softly, gently, and the audience immediately quieted, drawn into the story unfolding before them. Every note carried the emotions she had experienced in her life: hope, struggle, joy, and resilience. She played as if the room itself was alive, responding to each chord and melody. Faces turned toward her, eyes closed, smiles spreading, some even wiping away quiet tears. The connection she felt was stronger than anything she had known before. She realized that music had the power to transcend barriers, to communicate directly to the heart, and to create moments of shared understanding among strangers. It was both humbling and exhilarating. The audience was captivated not only by her skill, but by the honesty of her performance. Each note spoke of her journey: the long shifts at the restaurant, the quiet practice in hidden corners, the courage it took to play in front of a crowd for the first time. She saw reflections of her own struggles in the faces of the listeners, and in that moment, she understood the universality of human experience. Music had become her language, a way to express what words could not. After the performance, many guests approached her, their words filled with admiration and curiosity. Some asked about her background, her inspirations, and how she had discovered her talent. Others shared how the music had moved them personally, sparking memories or emotions long buried. She responded with humility, grateful for their appreciation, yet quietly proud of the journey that had led her to this point. The experience was validating, affirming the hours of dedication she had devoted to her art. The manager who had first recognized her talent continued to support her, offering guidance and encouragement. He reminded her that her gift was rare and that she had the potential to reach even larger audiences. The thought was both exciting and daunting, but she embraced it with cautious optimism. Each performance became a stepping stone, a chance to grow, to refine her craft, and to deepen her connection with those who listened. Over time, she received more invitations to perform, each one different from the last. Some were small gatherings, intimate settings where every listener could feel the nuances of her music. Others were larger events, demanding more presence and confidence. With each performance, she learned to navigate new challenges, to trust her instincts, and to let the music guide her. The fear that had once gripped her heart gradually transformed into a quiet determination and joy. She also began to notice the impact her music had beyond the immediate audience. People shared their experiences with friends, spoke of the emotions they had felt, and encouraged others to attend future performances. It was a ripple effect, one she had never imagined possible. The realization that her music could reach far beyond the stage filled her with purpose and inspired her to continue growing as an artist. Despite the increasing recognition, she remained grounded. She understood that her journey was not defined solely by applause or accolades, but by the sincerity of her expression and the connections she forged through her music. Each note was a reflection of her life, her emotions, and her perspective, and sharing it was both an honor and a responsibility. She approached each performance with care, mindful of the trust placed in her by the audience and the privilege of being able to touch hearts. Through her art, her life began to shift in other ways as well. She found herself more confident in daily interactions, more willing to take risks, and more open to new experiences. The courage she had cultivated through her performances spilled over into her personal life, giving her the freedom to explore opportunities she might previously have shied away from. She discovered a sense of empowerment that came not from recognition alone, but from the awareness of her own capabilities and the knowledge that she could make a difference. She continued to practice diligently, refining her technique and exploring new musical ideas. The piano became a companion, a mentor, and a canvas for self-expression. She experimented with different styles, composed original pieces, and allowed her emotions to shape her art. The process was deeply personal, a dialogue between her inner world and the external reality she navigated daily. Every practice session strengthened her skill, deepened her understanding, and expanded her creative horizons. One evening, after a particularly moving performance, she sat alone at the piano, reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. The quiet of the empty hall wrapped around her, and she allowed herself a moment of gratitude. She thought of the countless hours she had spent practicing in secret, the moments of doubt and frustration, the small victories that had gone unnoticed. Each experience had contributed to the depth of her music, shaping the performer she had become. She realized that her story was more than just about talent. It was about resilience, courage, and the willingness to take a chance on oneself. Her journey from the quiet corners of the restaurant to the attention of an appreciative audience was a testament to the power of persistence, passion, and authenticity. She understood that the path forward was still filled with challenges, but she approached them with a newfound confidence and a belief in her ability to rise to any occasion. As time went on, she embraced opportunities to share her music in even broader contexts. She performed at community events, charity gatherings, and local festivals, each time touching new hearts and inspiring others with her story. The joy she felt was not just in the applause, but in the connections she created, the emotions she evoked, and the sense of purpose that music brought into her life. Her journey had become a mission, a way to contribute to the world through the language she knew best. She continued to work at the restaurant, but her perspective had shifted. No longer was it merely a job, it was a stepping stone, a place that had nurtured her talent and prepared her for the opportunities that followed. She moved through her daily routine with a sense of purpose, carrying the lessons she had learned and the confidence she had gained into every interaction. The piano, once a hidden refuge, had become a symbol of her growth, a testament to her resilience, and a bridge to a future filled with possibility. Through it all, she never lost sight of the simple joys that had fueled her passion from the beginning. The quiet moments at the piano, the satisfaction of a well-played melody, and the connection with her own emotions remained at the heart of her journey. She understood that the essence of her music lay not in recognition or fame but in the authenticity of expression and the ability to touch others through heartfelt performance. Her story inspired those around her, from colleagues to audience members, demonstrating the power of talent, perseverance, and courage. She became a quiet symbol of hope, showing that even in ordinary circumstances, extraordinary potential could be realized through dedication and belief in oneself. Her life had been transformed, not by luck or circumstance alone, but by her willingness to embrace her gift and share it with the world. And so, she continued, performing, practicing, and connecting with audiences, each day adding a new chapter to her journey. The restaurant remained a familiar backdrop, a place where her story had begun, but the world beyond it now awaited her music. Her performances became milestones, moments of genuine connection, and reminders of the power of courage, resilience, and heartfelt expression. Through music, she had found her voice, and in sharing it, she had discovered a life filled with possibility, purpose, and profound joy.